Welcome to What to Think, VentureBeat's new podcast focused on the tech news and topics that matter to you. I'm Dylan Tweeney, the editor-in-chief of VentureBeat.
And I'm Jolie Odell, VentureBeat.com's managing editor.
Between the two of us, you've got the two top folks on VentureBeat's editorial team. We're going to start out by talking for a few minutes about the top news of this week in tech. And then we're going to talk to a very special guest for another 15 or 20 minutes. So we have something for everybody.
What do you say we kick things off with China? I've been watching China for a few years now, and it's just heating up so much. Take it away, Dylan. You tell the people.
Well, so China, obviously, China's kind of standing out right now because there are two companies that are going public. Alibaba is the big one, and it's kind of like China's answer to Amazon.com, eBay, PayPal, and a bunch of other things all rolled up into one. It's gigantic.
Alibaba Group does everything.
They do everything. Now, they're going to be going public on the U.S. stock market, and we think they might announce that as early as this week. And if it does, it could be the biggest tech IPO ever, even bigger than Facebook. Now, here's the thing. Another Chinese company that competes with Alibaba called Weibo went public last week.
Well, do they compete with Alibaba? They just do. It's a Twitter clone, right?
Yeah, they're a microblogging service, exactly.
And I think Alibaba probably has one or two of those.
And they might, somewhere in their group. Now, here's the thing. Last week was actually not a very good week for tech stocks. It was the kind of week where almost every tech IPO went down. And so all the pundits started saying like, oh, is the tech bubble starting to burst? Weibo is one of the companies that actually their stock went up after the IPO. So people are looking at Weibo and thinking, if it's good for Weibo, maybe it'll be good for Alibaba. Maybe the future of American tech IPOs is actually in China.
1 billion Chinese people can't be wrong.
That's what they say.
Yeah, they do say that. You know who can be wrong, though, from time to time?
Uh-oh.
Tom Preston Werner. Oh, it's such a messed up story because here's the thing. It's important news. GitHub is a major company. As the president of GitHub, Tom Preston Werner is a major public figure. He's the spokesperson for GitHub.
Of course.
But then, so there's the news side of it. And then there's the gossip side of it. This is a very weird story. Tom Preston Werner was forced to resign from his position at GitHub and step away from this company he co-founded because a former employee accused him of sexual harassment, sexism, discrimination, etc.
Now, this is not the first time that we've heard about a startup in Silicon Valley having a really kind of bro culture,
sexism
right?
problem?
Yeah.
Well, no. And I, in my own experiences with the GitHub folks, I think individually they are all about equality and merit-based thought. However, I do think that it's a bro-dominated culture, a dude-dominated culture, like so many startups in San Francisco. So it's come down to a he said, she said thing between Julianne Horvath, that employee, and Tom Preston Werner. And rather than put his company's reputation in jeopardy, Tom just threw up his hands and he said, okay, I'm leaving. It was an error in judgment. Now, this makes me think, do you think GitHub's getting ready for an IPO? Why else would he be so very concerned about the company's reputation? I'm not sure the customers, the enterprise customers would care so very much about one employee's accusations.
Now, didn't GitHub just take a massive pile of money about a year and a half ago?
$100 million Series A from Andreessen Horowitz.
Huge pile of money. Unheard of Series A.
Biggest Series A of all time. I think I confirmed that.
I think there's going to be an IPO somewhere, and maybe sooner rather than later.
They always do talk about how they love having an independent company, but I don't know, the time might be right. We'll see. One of the other big stories that continues is Heartbleed the Bug. I don't even know what it does. So
Heartbleed is a vulnerability in one of the key protocols used by almost every website out there that does any kind of security at all. It's a SSL, which is what your browser is using when it communicates securely with a web server. That little lock icon appears in your browser that lets you know that it's using SSL. Well, many websites use this version called OpenSSL, and there was a bug in it that made it very easy for malicious people to get all kinds of data out of servers despite the security, including passwords, usernames, social security numbers, and God knows what. Now, this made a big splash when it came out a couple weeks ago. every major site moved very quickly to fix it.
And
but
when we say major, it's like the top 1,000 sites are all patched.
Exactly. But this information security company named Securi took a look at the 1 million top websites around the world, and they found that most of the sites are fixed, but there are still 20,000 sites out there still vulnerable to the Heartbleed bug. I think that's just a sign of how widespread this problem is and how long it's going to take to actually fix the problem everywhere that it exists.
And I think it's important to note this is not an isolated problem. Bugs like these, the more data we share on the internet, the more likely it is that people are going to find ways to exploit that data. And it's just foolishness to put your social security number on the internet.
That is true. It also, I think, points
Hide it under your mattress like an adult.
Write it on a Post-it note in your wallet.
Not in your wallet. If you get mugged, think, Dylan.
Yeah. God, good point.
Yes.
I should just chew up that Post-it note and put it away.
Get it tattooed on your navel.
OpenSSL is an open source project. And here's the interesting thing. There's basically like one full-time guy working on OpenSSL and a bunch of volunteers. There's almost no funding for this at all. And a few organizations like Google occasionally contribute some code.
That's pretty common for a lot of very important open source projects.
It is, but I mean, when you think about it, how little is being actually devoted to building something like OpenSSL that everyone uses and everyone relies on.
For things like this, it could be thousands and thousands of developers all around the world working around the clock, making contributions, et cetera, et cetera.
It's true.
Open source armies are powerful.
They can be.
So before we welcome our special guest, I would like to take a moment to say a quick thank you to our host and sponsor, New Relic. We love New Relic. It's a software analytics company that helps you make sense of billions of metrics across millions of web and mobile apps. You know, Dylan, I actually interviewed the CEO of New Relic not too long ago, and we talked about this special database he himself built.
Lou Cerny, one of the standout real coding CEOs.
Yeah. And he had to reimagine how all this, billions and billions of data points get handled and lifted. So it's cool stuff. New Relic helps the people who build modern software, that's developers, business folks, etc., understand the stories their data is trying to tell them. It supports PHP, Python, Ruby, Java, .NET, of course, Node.js, iOS, and Android apps. So when your software breaks, everyone loses. Use New Relic to improve your software performance so your users have a better experience, and then your business can be more successful. You can make more money. Always follow the money. New Relic. Thank you very much, New Relic. And with that, I'd like to bring on our guest. Don't you know who it is, Dylan?
Francisco Dow.
It's Francisco.
Am I supposed to say something here? Hello.
Hi, welcome to What to Think, Francisco. And there's nobody better to tell these hapless rubes what to think than Francisco Dow.
Well, I'm not so sure about that, but I will try.
You're right. It's me. No, but you're a close second. So thank you for being on the show, Franny.
Thank you for having me.
Francisco, what is it that you do here?
What do I do there at VentureBeat? I don't do anything at VentureBeat.
What are you doing on our podcast, man?
What do I do in general? Well, primarily I run kind of unique events. Actually a week from today, I'm taking a group of entrepreneurs and VCs, and we're going to go to Panama and play drug smuggler across the country, kind of an amazing race thing.
And I think that'll be a really great life skill when the tech bubble bursts for these particular people.
It's very real. And I actually designed the trip. People keep asking, is it dangerous? And the best answer I can give them is it's as dangerous as you want it to be. Because, relating it back to tech, I actually think so much of the tech world, or the business, not even the tech world, so much of the modern world, period, is kind of an illusion. We entrepreneurs especially all think, oh, I'm doing real stuff. Are you? Or are you just moving stuff around on a screen?
So Francisco, is this like just recreation to get away from it all? Or is this a networking thing that you do with so that people can get to know each other better and form relationships?
It's been a few years, and Jolie wasn't even with VentureBeat at the time, but Jolie met her husband on one of my trips.
I did. And I also saw a media legend on this trip. We went horseback riding. I saw media legend Tom O'Reilly without his underpants. I'm sorry, Tim O'Reilly, no underpants. We'll never forget that.
Too much information on that one.
Well, everybody else was in their underpants. I was not part of that But no, it was legendary.
Let's talk about the unreality of entrepreneurship, Francisco, because one of the things that's sort of been the buzz of Silicon Valley, all these people have been sharing this story by Felix Salmon from Reuters about how going to work for a startup is kind of like the most expensive lottery ticket in the world. And it's actually, I found that this post to be very, very kind of angry, but despite that, he made some really good points, which is that, you go to work for a startup and 10% of startups, everybody says this, only 10% of startups have any chance of success.
Oh, I think it's 1% now. There are too many startups for that 10% stat to still be viable.
It's especially true with all these copycats. We have clones of everything, right?
We have multiple underwear delivery services.
Multiple underwear delivery services.
And Francisco, you've got a really refreshing perspective on this. We're talking about BS. You have a no BS policy.
Yeah, people, again, I mean, everything I say, I certainly, because I live in the tech world, as do both of you, as do probably everybody listening to this podcast. But my criticisms are actually at the world in general. For everyone who read the Felix Salmon piece, you should click through, because he actually references a book, and it's an ebook that costs $1.99, and it was something that somebody wrote for Wired. And the ebook is the extended version. It's 48 pages long. And when I saw the Felix Salmon piece yesterday, I clicked through. I bought the ebook. I read it last night in a couple of hours. It's 48 pages. It's phenomenal. It is beautifully written and amazing.
This is the book called No Exit?
No Exit.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the gist of it?
The writer follows a real startup. I believe it's a real startup. He changes the name of the startup and the names of the players, but the story has because it's actually a real startup, sort of thinly disguised. AngelPad is mentioned and Google Ventures is mentioned, and it's all, sort of playing out in real time. In the Felix Salmon piece, he mentions, the most expensive lottery ticket in the world. The book itself gets into more of this kind of mass delusion and idea of exceptionalism. And he talks a little bit about, people come to the Valley because they want to do something. We don't have wars, and, we don't have many ways to even find ourselves or anything, or to feel like we're making a difference. And so people come and they think like, well, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, and this is how I'm going to make my mark, and I'm going to be a world changer. How? By mailing underwear? I mean, that's not what the startup in the book does. They're doing something else. But
some of that is real. There are people in the Valley, and maybe they aren't getting the bulk of the media attention right now, while everybody's focused on Facebook and Twitter and the whole social media ecosystem around it. But there are still people coming here who really do want to change the world.
Oh, I think that's a bit of bull crap. I mean, okay, at VentureBeat, we have a tips line called tips@venturebeat.com where people send us their tips. I don't think we get more than one good tip a week about a startup that's really trying to change the world, that has any chance of success.
Well, just because 90% of everything is crap doesn't mean that
99,
the other 10% or 1%, however you want to look at it, is worthless, right? I mean, right now, being an entrepreneur is kind of like being a rock star was in the 70s, right?
Barf.
Everybody wants to be that.
Barf.
But you know what? In the 70s, everybody wanted to be a rock star, but we still got Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, but they had sex with everybody and did a lot of drugs. Entrepreneurs can't hold a candle.
So the delusion, Dylan, is how people perceive themselves. So along the lines of, are there some people still doing great stuff? Absolutely. But who are those people, and are you, as in the masses, really one of them? And I'll give you an example of this. Someone I know, a friend of mine on Facebook, posted an article about Wall Street and its obsession with money. And I commented on it, and everybody loves to beat on Wall Street. And believe me, I'm no defender of Wall Street. But I commented, I said, well, isn't that basically the same obsession in Silicon Valley? And my friend commented back. He said, no, in Silicon Valley, you have Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and Larry Page, and we're here to change the world. They're not fake world changers. I said, well, Mark, Larry, and Elon are real world changers.
They're
really rich.
They are.
You just named the three dudes, right? There's thousands, tens of thousands of people running around doing ridiculous stuff. comparing themselves, using Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and Larry Page as, oh, I'm like them. No, you're not. You're not like them.
It's like the garage band, they're not Led Zeppelin, right? But does that invalidate the whole enterprise just because everybody can't be Robert Plant?
It's completely fine to not be Elon Musk, but just stop kidding yourself. Just like it's fine. Again, not everybody can be the Rolling Stones or Led Zeppelin or whoever it is, but just say it. We're a hair band. We're doing this for the chicks. Right? Just say it. We're Poison. We're Warrant. We're Warrant.
Hey, don't knock Poison. Those chicks were hot.
So the delusion isn't. I'm not against entrepreneurship. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, but I'm just some dude who does stuff to make money.
So what's the key then? I mean, for Francisco, why do you do it as an entrepreneur? Even you can't be Elon Musk, so why do you do it?
Because he don't like to work. He likes to nap.
I do it because I hate working. I'm dead serious. So
there are a lot of people like that, I think.
It's simply the perception. I don't even, I rip on the underwear delivery guys all the time. And to be fair to them, they've actually been pretty good sports about it. I'm not even if someone came to me and said, I make 10 grand a month mailing underwear. I worked my way through college. I support my parents. It's awesome. I would look at him and be like, you're my hero. I think that's the greatest thing I've ever. Right? Bravo. But instead it's, we're disrupting underwear. What the hell are you talking about?
I don't want my underwear disrupted. They're fine where they are.
There is a kind of there's a kind of language that Silicon Valley people get, which is all about disruption and kind of it's really over the top. They look down on what they call lifestyle businesses, right? 10 grand a month, like you were describing, might sound like a pretty good life to a lot of people, especially if they don't have to work full time to get it. But
I think that they
denigrate that.
Going back to the delusion, there's this idea that everything has to be epic. And if you're not here to change the world, then go home. No, not every business needs to or should change the world. Sometimes you need people to, if not deliver, at least make your underwear.
And that's the other thing, speaking of delivering and making. Silicon Valley, and I use Silicon Valley generically, obviously, for this sort of tech community, has confused delivery with production. Paul Kudrowski, who, if you don't follow him on Twitter, is maybe the greatest person to follow on Twitter. He's intelligent and funny and responds to you and all at the same time. I don't know when the man works.
He's a really smart guy, yeah.
Yeah, he's awesome. But, yesterday Paul tweeted something about how he had argued that people who compare Airbnb's valuation to Hilton is wrong, that it should be considered a market. And I tweeted at Paul, I said Silicon Valley consistently confuses the sales conduit with the production. It's like somebody owning a network of car dealerships and comparing themselves to Ford. Just because let's say I owned a bunch of car dealerships of all these different brands, and I sold, I sold millions of cars a year from all these different brands. And then I'm saying, I'm as big as Ford. No, I don't make any cars. I don't have any assembly lines.
You're saying you're disrupting the automotive industry.
Yeah, I'm disrupting autos. I haven't made a single car.
That's interesting, though, because, Airbnb has arguably put together a very efficient network or market, if you want to call it that, for connecting people who want a place to stay with people who have an extra room. You could say that Uber is doing a similar thing. They're not like actually owning cars or totally, going directly into the taxi business, but they are effectively, you could say, disrupting the taxi business because they have a very efficient market for connecting people with cars who can give them rides.
Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. Airbnb is a wonderful business and it's a great service. I think sleeping in people's houses is a little weird, but a lot of people like it. Obviously, they're doing millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars of business. There is nothing wrong with what Airbnb is doing. There's nothing flawed with what Airbnb is doing, or Uber, or anything else. I am simply saying, do not confuse being the salesperson or even the marketplace or the conduit with being the source. again, using my car dealership analogy, there's nothing wrong with owning lots of car dealerships, and you can make millions of dollars and sell millions of cars. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing flawed or dirty or anything wrong with that. Just don't confuse the fact that you're selling cars versus making cars. That's all I'm saying. Just don't confuse the fact that you've created a marketplace for people renting their rooms as opposed to owning hotels.
That's a fair point. Let's talk about a company that really is making something and it is not confused about what it's doing, and that's Apple.
Are we going to talk about the spaceship?
We could all hear your eye roll. That was an audible eye roll, Julie. Yes, I want to talk about the spaceship because that is going to be the coolest building in the entire Bay Area.
Who cares? It's a building.
Yeah, but it's going to be so cool.
It's a building.
It's going to be so cool.
I'm with Jolie on this. It's a building, and that's great. And I like architecture, and you know, maybe 150 years from now we'll be able to look at it and it'll stand the test of time. I don't know. I didn't study architecture. Maybe it'll be, you know, a historic building.
It's going to be some tacky relic of our obsession with science fiction.
What throws me about Apple, whether it's the building or simply the brand, is how it's become a godlike entity to so many people, especially people who follow the tech ecosystem.
It's been like that for a decade.
Well, this building, it's not a campus, it's a temple.
Oh yeah,
right? It's a temple.
It's a temple,
people view
absolutely.
it as a temple, and it's like it's not a temple. It's somebody's office building. It might be the best office building in the world.
It's a corporate park.
But it's a corporate park.
You know, Facebook is building a magnificent new headquarters too. It's gotten less attention, but they got a very fancy architect, Frank Gehry, to build it.
What, HP isn't good enough for them? HP's old stomping grounds?
I think it was Suns, yeah, but yes.
Oh, was it? Okay, yeah. Well, whatever.
Well, it sort of looks like Disneyland. Facebook's headquarters looks a little bit like Disneyland.
It looks like Main Street. It's beautiful.
Absolutely. But they're building some fancy new headquarters. I don't know who else is building headquarters. This is like a big thing in the Valley right now to build the gigantic.
Well, and Twitter picked an Art Deco historical building on Mid-Market Street in San Francisco and dolled it all up. And they brought in their own log cabins. Can you hear my eye roll? They brought in log cabins.
Let's face it, there is just a lot of money in Silicon Valley right now. A lot of money is flowing in, and these companies
it's so dot-com-y.
It feels a little dot-com-y, I agree. There
Frank
are some
Gehry
differences,
is the new
though.
sushi lunch and chair massage.
It feels a little different to me, though. It feels a little less. I don't know. Maybe I just want to believe this, but it feels less frothy to me than it was in the 90s.
Well, did you have a job in tech in the 90s?
Yes. Well, in tech journalism.
Well, less
it was
frothy.
crazy.
Less frothy how? I mean, I think it might be frothy in a different way. Certainly the overall dollar figures flowing in are smaller. You know, there's no web van raising $200 million or whatever it was they raised, you know, ludicrous amounts of money. Well, let's talk about froth. I'm going to go ahead and segue this because I think this is, you know, maybe this is a topical, I don't know, but everyone's talking about the HBO Silicon Valley TV show, whether it's good or bad or if they like it or not like it. And I watched the first episode, and I'm a big fan of Mike Judge. I mean, you know, Beavis and Butthead and King of the Hill and all that, and I'm a big fan. And I'll tie this back to how frothy we are and how ridiculous the reality is. And it wasn't that I disliked the show or thought it was poorly written, but my issue is I didn't think it was that funny. And the reason why I didn't think it was that funny is because the reality is far more ludicrous than the show. The show absolutely cannot be satirical because the reality is already satirical in itself. So let's again, I didn't watch second or third episodes, but on the first episode, the guy builds a compression technology that is supposedly, as far as the TV show is concerned, a compression technology that is proprietary and we'll use the word groundbreaking. At least people want it on the TV show. Everyone's like, "This is awesome! This is awesome! We want it." And he's offered $10 million for it. Okay, the $10 million for a proprietary compression technology for the whole company.
Sure, typical manquisition kind of situation, right?
But let's look at the reality.
Acquihire, sorry.
Okay, the reality is Dave Morin goes out and says, "I'm going to create a photo sharing thing that's going to be a lot like Instagram, except not, and I need $65 million to start it, and you're going to value my company at $500 million."
Whatever happened to Path?
Yeah, is anyone still using Path?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't. But somebody gave more than 65 or 70 million or whatever the number is.
I'll tell you what the difference is between now and the 90s, though. Like, there have always been people like Dave Morin who, on the basis of talent or just having a good line of talk or track record,
great bow ties,
have been able to go out and raise a ton of money at ridiculous valuations. What's different is that in the 90s, like every week, there was another handful of really stupid companies that never had revenues or never had profits of any kind that were going public. So we see a lot less of those companies going public now.
Do we?
Yes, I think so.
Okay,
I think Twitter is a great example of a company with bullcrap business model going public.
Yeah, but in the 90s, it was like
Zynga.
Twitter every week. It was like 5 Twitters every week.
So the difference then, okay, so the bubble has simply moved from the public markets to the private ones. It's certainly different. I'm not saying it's exactly the same. I'm old enough to remember. Yeah, I'm Dylan. Yes, you were right. I worked for a company called Ramp Networks that went public, and it was a public company for 6 quarters before it got acquired by Nokia, and it never once met its public number. It missed its number all 6 quarters that the company was public.
Yeah, there was a lot of that.
So in the 90s, yes, it was sort of shifted over into being a public NASDAQ bubble, and we don't have as much of that today.
But NASDAQ created a whole market for privately traded companies so that you can buy and sell equity in tech companies that haven't technically gone public yet.
But it's
there are a few of those markets.
I mean, the space of the bubble, I think, has changed and shifted into this. The term bubble does not refer specifically to public markets. A bubble can exist in other places. A bubble can exist in angel, in angel investing or Series A investing, or actually even in terms of entrepreneurial zeitgeist. What do entrepreneurs think? Is there a bubble in terms of kids getting off the bus in San Francisco? Living the dream or thinking that they're living the dream. And speaking of San Francisco, when did living within the city limits endow you with some sort of magic fairy dust?
Oh my gosh, we're going to have to talk about that one at some point
you're
really
in LA.
soon.
You just wouldn't understand, Francisco.
Oh God, LA is the real fairy dust, man. They got the good stuff down there.
Somebody can't live in Oakland, or I mean,
No.
Pandora's in Oakland.
I've been living in San Mateo for years, and nobody ever wants to come down to San Mateo. It's like toxic down there.
Nerd.
Right.
So
and that's fine. But, is your company, oh my God, your company is 2 miles outside the city limits of San Francisco. You have no chance of making it.
It's sad.
I don't really get this. This makes no sense to me.
Nothing makes sense. This is a beautiful, distorted pseudo-reality that we're in. And thank you so much, Francisco, for helping us all to see once again that the emperor has no clothes. Okay, we do have to wrap it up. So, Francisco, tell our dear listeners exactly where they can find you online and what you would like them to do now that they know your name.
Where to find me online? Well, on Twitter, I'm the man, simply just the man. If you want to go to events I'm doing one in September on Catalina Island. You can find that at i3island.com. So the number 3 island.com, and there'll be sort of TED with a festival vibe. We're going to do a stage out on the beach, and
oh, that does sound fun.
That sounds way more fun than being a drug smuggler in Panama.
Oh,
I have
Dylan.
to say. But that's just me.
Dylan's a little girl.
Francisco, it's been great to talk with you. Thank you so much for joining our podcast.
No, thank you for having me.
And thank you so much to New Relic for hosting and sponsoring this podcast. This has been What to Think.